Many thanks to Skillshare, the generous sponsors of this video.
Hello and thanks for joining me, and today I've just popped out to the coast of Anglesey, close to where I live. Now, I've parked up at a really popular spot called Cable Bay, and most of the summer you won't get a parking space there. Plus the fact there's still quite a few people enjoying the beach at the moment, but I happen to know of this tiny little cove with shingle beach and completely secluded. A lot of walkers come along the coast path above me, but very few scramble down onto the beach, so I figured I'd have the place to myself for a couple of hours shooting mid-afternoon. It's a high spring tide and it's just on the turn at the moment, so it's going to be ebbing down the beach. I know that it has quite a few interesting rock formations and they're gradually going to start to appear, and as they do there'll be waves breaking around them. There's also some nice surf rolling down the shingled beach which I'm hoping to shoot as well. So hopefully it'll be an enjoyable couple of hours. Well, I've been chasing this shot down the beach for quite a while here. Moved down about 10 or 15 feet already, and I only set up about 10 minutes ago. So I actually prefer to chase the tide down the beach rather than up. And you'll forgive me if I keep having to break off to grab a shot, because it's always a matter of looking for the perfect wave. A tip with this sort of photography is that if you're looking to get the streaking in the waves, you want to time it so that you start your exposure just about a second or half a second after the wave has started to recede down the shingle, because that's what gives you the best streaking effect. If you try and shoot the wave on the way in, what often happens is that water following behind it rolls over the surf and you don't get those nice long streaks that I'm looking for. As you can see, I'm shooting in portrait mode. I'm going to square crop this, I think, in the end up. I put my wide angle lens on here. It's a 9 to 18mm lens that I usually only use for video work, but it was what I needed here because I wanted to get the rocks in either side to frame the image a little bit, and just to kind of contain the area where the waves are running through in the final composition. I've got a polarizing filter on. I've also got a 0.9 soft grad filter on, and then I'm using an ND64, which has 6 stops of light, to bring my shutter speed up to about 1.5 seconds, which is just perfect. I don't want to smooth out the main body of water too much, and that gives me just long enough to catch the streaks as they run back down this lovely wet shingle. I'm also lucky there is actually a little bit of definition in the sky as well to create a bit of extra mood, and when I first got here it was pretty flat, so that's a bonus. I'm pretty much all done with that shot. Probably 20 or 30 frames on the card. I wasn't really planning to blend the exposures, but you never know. I'm not averse to being creative in post-processing. You know, I'm not going to put somebody else's sky in one of my images, but most certainly blending different exposures, slightly different times to create an overall finished image. Sun's coming out now, which frankly I could do without because it's creating quite a lot of glare, and I quite like the definition of the sky that I was getting with this shot a bit earlier on. But if that sky breaks up and it just turns blue, anyway, let's see what I can find. Having to clear up a bit of seaweed there. I had a lovely composition organised, and it just drifted in and parked itself right in the bottom corner of my shot. I really like this rock in front of me, and actually the sun is kind of an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage. It lights up these lovely angles on this rock really nicely, and they all kind of lie across at a diagonal. And it picks out the highlights of it, and it'll create much more interest than a flat light would. The problem I've got with it is that with the white surf in the foreground, that is running the risk of being clipped in my image. This is all about timing. I'm using my remote and timing the shots based on what the water's doing. Done a lot of mucking about with this composition. I started off over there a few yards, but the problem I had with that was that the rock was just too central. I like this angle of it with these little rocks in the foreground, and also just here I've got another teeny tiny little grey rock just off to the left hand side, which in terms of the composition I quite like. It's certainly not a distraction. I think it adds to it, and also as the waves come in they swirl around it a little bit more, makes it more interesting. The shot, running the risk of it being a bit boring, is almost identical setup. I'm shooting at f10 and I'm playing with the aperture a little bit because I don't want to go up to a 10 stop because a 4 or 5 second exposure is too long. But with my 6 stop on, I can play with it anywhere between a second and 2.5 seconds. I've got the camera down really low for this shot because at normal height, and worth bearing this in mind when you're out doing photography, thinking about how high you have the camera. It's very tempting just to park it there and look straight through the viewfinder or have the screen right in front of you. I've gone down low because unless I was very high looking over the rock, at normal height I've got bits of horizon sticking out between the top of the rock, and I didn't want that at all. So by dropping it down just a little bit, the rock comes out and breaks the horizon all the way along. I didn't want it to kind of not be making its mind up, if you like. The light's quite nice, quite happy with the way things are in those terms, and frankly I've had much worse afternoons.
We interrupt this programme for an important announcement. Important only insofar as I forgot to mention it on the beat. I'm planning a Q&A video before too long. I announced it on the community stream and I've already got some questions in. But if you wanted to ask me anything, please do feel free to leave a comment below. And now on with our regular programming. Now, when Skillshare got in touch and said, would I be interested in them sponsoring a video, I was really flattered because I've been a premium member of Skillshare for quite some time. It's great value for money, and you get access to thousands of creative classes. Now, a Skillshare membership means that you've got full access to everything they have to offer, all sorts of really interesting and creative skills. Of course, photography and video production. I'm currently taking a class by Thomas Frank in media productivity. It's really interesting. Plus, you get to interact with other people taking the class and the tutor. But there are topics ranging from fine art and music to technical skills like web development and UX design. So there's bound to be something there that you'll find interesting. And the first 1,000 people who use the link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare.
Plenty of exposures on the card for that shot. I think I can make something of it. The tide has now rolled down past that rock, and I'm just waiting to see what else it reveals as it ebbs away. I love this bit of coastline. I must admit, I didn't really know it that well before we moved here back in 2013. But this whole area from the lovely beach at Rosniger down to Llanddwyn Island, and of course everybody's familiar with Llanddwyn Island. Even if you haven't visited, you almost certainly have seen photographs. But it offers so much, this little stretch of coastline, and it's really accessible. If you want some interesting seascapes and you want wide open beaches and rocky coves and quite impressive cliffs and headlands, you've got all of that within just a few miles. And I was out here one evening in the week with some friends, so I wasn't videoing, but I did manage to get myself quite a nice sunset seascape. I didn't hold out a lot of hope for it at the time. As it happened, I was shooting straight into the sun and I thought my exposures were all over the place. But I was pleasantly surprised when I got home and took a look. So as you can see, it did work out quite well. This is a blend of 3 exposures, one for the sky, which I waited a little while for, and the first 2 were for that wave in the midground, and then just in front of the camera, where it's bouncing the light off quite nicely. But this afternoon was just popping out for a couple of hours practice. And do you know what? You really can't overstate practicing with photography. The light isn't bad, the subject material isn't bad at all. But clearly there are better occasions, like for example, when I was out in my last video in the mountains and was treated to a really nice sunrise. So it's quite important to be ready for those moments so that when the light is fabulous, when the subject materials are fabulous, you can take advantage of them. And I do an awful lot of practicing. I'm out and about along this coastline a great deal with my dog, and I always take my camera with me. Of course, I never film it. If I'm dog walking, I certainly can't be distracted by trying to make a video at the same time. But here's just 1 or 2 images over the last 6 to 9 months that I've captured when I've been out and about with a dog. And if you follow me on social media, you'll have seen these before. But if you don't follow me on social media, hopefully you'll enjoy this small gallery. I want to see if I can find at least one more shot before I have to clock out. I've got about 30 to 45 minutes before I need to make a move. So I'm going to see if I can find something where perhaps the water is running up and over some rock rather than around it. Well, I'm now perched up on the rock that we were shooting earlier because the tide's run out and I can get onto it. And it gives me a good vantage point to shoot along the coast, these lovely fingers of rock. And as the tide's dropping, all the barnacles are being exposed. The sun has been a bit hit and miss, but I actually want some bright sun for this particular shot because I want to bring out the aquas in the sea against the lovely golden barnacles. And without some direct sunlight on it, it's a bit unsaturated. You'll notice that I'm also shooting without my remote trigger because I have a really good reason for that. It's not a technical reason, it's that I dropped it in the sea, so it's dead. Which is just as well that I do like a cheap Chinese knockoff from Amazon because it's only going to cost me 15 quid to replace it. It'll be the third one that I've had. The first one broke about 2 years ago. But, you know, if they last you a couple of years and they only cost 15 quid, in the scheme of things, I can live with that. But I'm having to shoot very, very carefully here because I don't want to knock the camera. But of course, I can't use 2-second timer or 3-second timer as I normally use because I'm timing it for these waves. So I'm hoping that my setup is rigid enough, and it is a very rigid setup, to be fair. I've had a look at a few and I don't think I'm introducing any shake, but I am being really, really careful. This image is probably a little bit unbalanced because with most coastal scenes you get the coast down one side and the sea running off the other, so all the weight, if you will, is kind of on one side of the image. There's nothing you can do about that. And I think that by and large people expect that, so they don't look at your image and think, oh, that's not very well balanced. I'm still shooting at 2 seconds, which is just right for the sort of movement we've got today. And it's working quite well. I'm pretty hopeful of getting a half decent shot here out of this. Anyway, pretty much run out of time, so I'm going to have to clock out. I'll leave it there for this one. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, why not subscribe now and join me next time? Cheers.